Regular meeting for council on October 7th, 2020. We're reconvening from the in-camera session at 7 p.m. At this time, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any of the councillors tonight?
Your Worship.
Councillor Montgomery?
I would like to move number 11.3 and 11.4 to the next council meeting, so I believe that would be on the 21st, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the notice of motion then?
Yeah, the notice of motion and the code of conduct complaint.
Okay. Thank you. Any other emergent items from council? Administration?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have two additions to the agenda and one amendment. The amendment is we would like to move item 9.2, potential conversion therapy bylaw, to item 9.1, and then subsequently 9.1 to 9.2. And we would also like to add item 9.5, council meeting schedule change, and item 9.6, council budget meeting dates.
Thank you, Jennifer. Since there aren't any others, I'm looking for a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Corbio?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the agenda as amended.
Hurt my neck. We have a motion to accept to adopt the agenda as amended. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Peterson. I see you. And that brings us to item 4. We have no presentations or recognitions. And that now brings us to item 5, delegations. 5.1, Growing Families Society. Yeah.
Hello.
Good evening. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for council who may not know you as well as the audience at home.
Sure. I'm Margot Sevick with the Growing Family Society. Hello. So good evening, Mayor Fuel and members of council. I'm here this evening to provide to you an update on our programs from 2019. We're a little bit delayed because of COVID-19. I'd also like to inform you that our 3-year memorandum of agreement is complete at the end of this year. And we would like to request another 3 years of similar funding. And the 3 years block funding has allowed us to plan for the future much more efficiently and effectively. So we receive just over $21,000 a year from the town to support our programs. I encourage you to think of this as an investment in our community that gives back great returns in different ways for each of our programs. Growing Opportunities, referred to as GO, is a program for at-risk pregnancies. This program reaches out to a demographic in our community that is hard to support to many possible individual risk factors such as age, economic constraints, or lack of family support. GO is an in-home visitation program by a team consisting of a nurse, support worker, life skills worker, and access to a nutritionist as well. Our team supports these individuals through counseling, nutrition supplements, support, education, resources, and connecting them to the community services. Our town of Strathmore dollars make a large investment in a new baby's life. It supports moms to make better life choices and ultimately improves the life of their baby, the future of our town. This is a return on your investment. Bridging the Gap, or BTG, focuses on our seniors to engage and empower them to volunteer their life skills, knowledge, and experience back into our community. Our programs support social participation and inclusion of seniors. COVID-19 shutdown was hard for our seniors. Their walls close in quickly when they lose their social network. Lunch Club, for this reason, has decided to go ahead with changes to be able to follow Alberta health guidelines. Our Bridging the Gap coordinator provides a skeleton of support to allow our volunteers to do what they do best, serve our community, and make it a better place to live. Without staff support, the effectiveness of BTG would be lost, and the color these volunteers add to our community would disappear. This is another return on your investment. Five for Life is a collaboration of agencies and volunteers. They do hire a summer student to run summer programs, and they do many fun things for the youngest members of our community. In 2018, a study shows that many children in our area who are entering kindergarten are still struggling. Five for Life focuses on these struggles to make families and caregivers aware of these shortfalls. Without the support from the town, these programs would not run. And because we have passionate volunteers that care about our future residents, the impact of your funding becomes unmeasurable. How can we put a value on the benefit of a child succeeding in kindergarten that will lead to their success in the remainder of their school years? This is a return on your investment. I also want to share with you a new community collaborative on mental health and addictions that the Growing Family Society was able to respond to quickly and to fill a need in our community due to the impact of COVID-19. We are able to submit grant applications and to act as a fiscal agent for this group. The first call awarded just over $85,000 to support a dedicated mental health resource navigation line. Through our many partnerships, we are thankful to help bring this resource to our town. Again, this is a return on your investment. We are a volunteer and partnership-based organization that strives to support and advocate for healthy lifestyles in our community to enhance the unity of family structure. Our total recorded volunteer hours for 2019 were 2,569 hours. That equals 49 hours a week. And if we give those hours minimum wage at $15 an hour, that works out to $38,535. And trust me, our volunteers are worth a lot more than minimum wage. The Growing Family Society can mobilize, enable, and empower volunteers to do great things for our town. And Mayor feel that is a return on our investment. At a time when fundraising is difficult and securing grant dollars is limited to many needs, the Growing Family Society is grateful for the town's partnership and support these past 3 years. Our hope is that you will continue to support our organization through multi-year block funding, so together we can continue to make Strathmore a better community for all of our residents.
Thank you very much, Margot, for your presentation. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
I read your report. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually highlighted the hours, and but I appreciate you giving me a dollar value for it. I'm just asking or reaching the question. 21,450 is the number that you were given in the past.
Yep.
Do you know how
That's
they made up that number?
It was based on so much for each program between GO, Bridging the Gap, and Five for Life, that each, and there was a formula that we used, and then there was actually an increase in the second year and the third year.
So are you able to give that for us again?
Absolutely.
For the new?
For our new agreement, we just need to start the discussions for it.
Okay, because we are in budget talks right now, so
Okay.
we do need to plan for that.
Yep.
So, I was just wondering where that number came from, and so that we can go forward with a new
Right,
number?
and I don't have a specific number for you tonight, but,
Okay.
I mean, more would always be used.
Of course.
We're not gonna turn it down, but it would be similar.
Would you be able to get that to us as soon as you could?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Corbeil?
Thank you, Your Worship. Hi, Margot.
Hi.
I have a couple of questions. I have a couple of comments too. I do agree. I know that all of these programs are huge and, you know, they give back an unmeasurable amount in our community. And I think that really helps make our community whole, especially those who really need it. So I do really value all of the programs and stuff like that. As for some of these, how do you feel COVID will maybe affect some of them?
So for growing opportunities, they went to strictly FaceTime and online. They left the in-home visits, and we are leaving that up to staff right now to their own comfort level of that. In the summertime, they did move to baby walks. As long as there weren't toddlers in the house, they would take mom and babe to the park for a walk, and that enabled time to communicate, because eyes on are really ideal, right? You get to, and staff do feel like, are we missing red flags? So, yeah, sooner we can get rid of this COVID, that would be fantastic. Bridging the Gap did shut down because that was a demographic of the population that's at extremely high risk.
Yeah.
But we did do in the summer, we did Pie in the Park, and they did one other program, and the seniors were so happy to be back together. So Lunch Club is a program where they would make meals, but we can't do that because of COVID. So we've started a new partnership with the Legion, and the Legion will be providing a meal for them, and they'll still get together. We've instituted pool noodles, because apparently a pool noodle is 5.5 feet long. So, because the seniors need a lot of training on social distancing. So, yeah, and then Five for Life, they're not running their fairs, the 2 and 3 year old fair that's in the fall, and 4 and 5 in the spring. But what they've come up with, they're doing bags, and they will have those distributed through different businesses in the town so that the resources can still get out to the families in need.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Bauer and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Margot, for your report and for coming today. Every single one of these programs is so valued in our community, and I know that you spend tireless amounts of time, your own time away from your family, because you believe in these. And thank you so much for your commitment and dedication. I have a few different questions. I wanted to know, have you calculated the money that you saved during the quarantine of the shutdown during COVID?
I don't know if there would be a savings. Certainly there were more expenses. We, on technology, to make sure we had enough to do the FaceTime, we improved on that, and just the PEP and sanitization, those were extra added on expenses. So no,
No.
The answer to your question, no, I don't have an exact savings, but there was also extra expenses because of COVID.
Right, yes, and that certainly is aligned with what we're experiencing as well. I just wondered if you had that happen. Do you have a number for the paid personnel versus the volunteers?
No, but if we phoned May, we could easily pull that out for you.
Okay, so you do have a number of volunteers that work with your association, right?
The majority of our personnel are volunteers. We have an executive director, and then the nurse is paid, and life skills and support worker are paid positions, staff as well. But we receive federal funding for our nurse. It's the life skills worker that we have added on, and that's why we need the extra funding for that.
And is there an opportunity for people that are within the community that have skills to be able to volunteer in any capacity as well?
Well, absolutely, because we have lots of volunteers. So yes, we welcome all volunteers. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, you answered with the Lions Club, a beautiful partnership. Would you like to highlight any others that you currently have? Partnerships with nonprofits?
Many, there's if I start naming them, I will miss some for sure. But There's the library, you put me on the spot.
I'm sorry, you can email me then, and
Okay.
I'll fan them out, because I really believe in what you're doing, and I just want to continue to support.
Yeah,
And
because
then,
we definitely could not do what we do without the collaboration of the town partners, all the community groups that we use, so.
and then, are there any supports that maybe are not monetary that we could give you? For example, FCS gives out the good food boxes, and we have the sports center available during low times. Are those things that, perhaps even a handy bus partnership, are those things that we could also consider in lieu of a financial donation?
Absolutely, and we do use those services, so, like the library provides us memberships for our families. We have a great partnership, another one is the food bank, right? So, many of our clients, because the food bank is once a month basket, but our clients will give them smaller baskets so that they get them weekly, potentially. So there's, yeah, so no, I feel like we are tapping into many of the town resources. The Five for Life, they'll do their free swimming, and so using the pool and, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Peterson from Indiana.
Hi, Margaret. I know that the sound connect, it's not,
Councillor Peterson, we can only see your chin.
It's your teeth
here, how about that?
and what she had for dinner.
Still the same. If,
I
Oh.
am trying to speak into the microphone, Your Worship, so that's what I'm on orders from Jennifer.
okay.
So one of the things that I just wanted to talk to Margot about or ask questions was regarding, you utilize the threshold testing through FCSS as well, correct?
I don't know the threshold testing.
For the people who utilize the programs that you are in partnership with?
No,
So
for growing
Sure.
opportunities, do you mean?
For all of your programs?
No, we have our own assessment on the intake, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. And secondly, I know that one of the things that I heard mentioned by organizations through you was that COVID had really highlighted issues of poverty and marginalization, that COVID had, I was wondering if you were prepared to speak to that a little bit.
Well, it does impact. So like one of our programs would be our postpartum support group that comes to my mind right off the bat. And the interaction that's needed, that is a group session that is done. We run 3 sessions throughout the year, and postpartum doesn't wait. It doesn't go on hold. And that group, we were actually able to continue on, and it was quite successful through a FaceTime platform. And our moms were able to still engage, and they kept, that they keep coming back to the sessions. That's how we can always measure it. If there's 8 sessions total, and if they come to more than 6, we deem it a success. So, and we've given out more incentives than we ever have before. So,
Yeah.
so that would be one specific example. Are you looking for more?
No, exactly. I guess what I'm hearing from communities who, and from organizations and community who deal with that demographic, it is that these people are saying that without those programs that they're nameless and faceless, and they are definitely struggling more in COVID than they ever were before, and so those programs become incredibly important. I really appreciate the economic end of this that you bring to town council in a time of budget. Several years ago, the fiduciary calculation was done by a company out of Edmonton with regards to growing opportunities in the young women in your program. And one of the things that I remember so clearly was they said there was a gain in income over the working life of these young women between $9,000 and $30,000 that was related specifically not just to the support you gave to them, but to the early intervention for their children. and that early intervention increased their cognitive achievements by 0.35 standard deviations. It's almost impossible. It's almost an incalculable amount economically when you think about that. And so I just want you to know that, for my part, that $21,400 seems to be an unbelievably good investment for our community. And I want to thank you and the people, the thousands of hours of volunteers. Your work has been extraordinary, and you haven't for 1-2 years, but I think you're well over the 25-year mark now, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. I would just echo what my fellow councillors have said. I've been really impressed with the various programs I've been able to visit with the Growing Opportunities. Oh, no, sorry, not Growing Opportunities, Bridging the Gap. I've met a few times with them and had some good
Coffee
sessions.
with the mayor.
That's right. And they keep you on your toes. I've also been able to tour the 5 for Life stations and go through those too. So I respect and appreciate everything you do for the community, because you bring a lot of help and support to people when they need it the most, but also with the young children who need some things too. So I think it's really good, and it's perfect timing because we're going into budget deliberations now. So we'll be looking ahead at that towards the end of October. So I appreciate your report, and thank you for all you do and all your volunteers and all your organizers. It's very much needed in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My kids are gonna miss the jelly bean dance.
I know. I'm
We
going
all
to
miss
miss the
that.
jelly bean dance.
Isn't that like chaos, organized chaos kind of when it starts?
It's just a good night with Halloween fun, right?
Oh, boy.
And candy.
Well, God bless you then, because it sounds scary to me.
All right.
Thanks very much, Margot,
Thank
for
you.
your report and presenting. That brings us to item 6. We have no consent agenda tonight, and 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, the adoption of the September 2nd, 2020 public hearing minutes. Councillor Montgomery.
I will move that we adopt the, what was it, September 2nd? September 2nd, public hearing minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor to adopt the public hearing minutes for September 2nd. All in favor? And that motion is carried. 7.2, adoption of the September 16th, 2020 public hearing minutes. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move the council adopt the September 16th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you very much. You've all heard.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just directed to administration. Regarding those confirmation, regarding the minutes, it says under number 2, confirmation of the agenda, that council adopt the September 16, 2020 regular council meeting agenda as presented. And then it says 14.1 and 10.1. Were those additions, or were those not on the original agenda package?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it should say as amended rather than as presented. We'll confirm that and deal with it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have that. Do we have to amend that motion then? Okay. So Jennifer, just as procedure, can we approve that?
Can't speak. Your Worship, I would recommend postponing item 4 or 7.3 to the next regular council meeting.
Okay. That's for the regular council meeting minutes? Because right now we're on 7.2, the public
Yeah.
hearing minutes?
Oh,
Right, that's correct, Your Worship. I think
Is looking ahead? Okay, all right, so right now we're on adopting the September 6th, right now we're on adopting the September 16th public hearing minutes?
Sorry.
That's okay. So there's a motion on the floor from Corbeil, Councillor Corbeil, sorry, I'm just into sports there. All in favor? And that motion is carried, and do you need a motion to postpone then? Councillor Sobel? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that we postpone the adoption of the September 16th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes.
Thank you very much. You all heard the motion. Oh, do you need a date? Thank you, Jen.
Sorry, till
s-
October 21st?
Okay, so we have it moved to,
Denise has a question.
Councillor Peterson?
I didn't hear why we were postponing, Your Worship.
As presented, and then there might have been she just wants to know why.
Right.
Because there's a bit of an error, and they need time to.
There was an error which consisted of items that were added to that agenda that aren't listed. So it's just kind of a housekeeping thing. We want to make sure that it's presented in its entirety to move to adopt. Okay,
Very
thank
good.
you.
And I don't know if it matters, but it's missing the time for coming out of in camera in that one as well. It says come out of in camera at what?
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to postpone till October 21st. I'm hoping that's what we have. All in favor? And the motion is carried. That brings us to item 8. We have no tabled items. And that now brings us to item 9, items or reports and/or reports from administration. 9.1, potential conversion therapy bylaw, which is found on page 27 of your agenda package. Jeff, you're here to present before the people come in.
I am.
Thank
Just a quick beginner, just that obviously the report, all 180 pages, as you noticed there, Councillor Sobel, has been provided there. It's all the public feedback that we collected between mid-August and the end of September. We had 6 people who signed up for public consultation tonight. We've got 4 of them here who are actually to present, and I believe that we've got our first presenter all set. So thank you very much. I'll come back again at the end if you have any questions as well.
Thank you very much for your work in getting this community feedback as well as compiling the information for us to read. It was really interesting. Some people made some really interesting points too. I went through them all. It was very good. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
And that brings us to our first person representing from the public, we have Jonathan Taylor. And welcome this evening. And I just want to quickly, I'm going to be reminding every speaker that you have a 5-minute presentation time. And I just want to assure each speaker as you come forward that tonight we're not passing any bylaw tonight. We're just possibly, if we vote on it, if we approve it, we'll be directing administration to start looking at drafting one. So welcome this evening.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Fuel, Town Councillors, Administration staff. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the potential conversion therapy ban in Strathmore. So my name is Jonathan Taylor. I grew up here in Strathmore. I went to junior high and high school here. I moved away for a time, but recently moved back to the Strathmore area. Strathmore is where my children will likely attend school, and Strathmore is where our family attends church each week. I'm here today as a concerned citizen. I feel strongly enough about this topic that I felt compelled to come and stand before you and put my name on the public record, even at the risk of public shaming. This topic has become so politically charged that many who would like to speak out don't feel they can without risk of being mischaracterized in the media, and in some cases without fear of losing their employment. That fact alone tells me that something is not right. Something is out of balance. First, I would like to thank the Town Council for the thoughtful and considerate way that you're proceeding with this issue. When I reached out to Town Administration for a copy of the bylaw, I was told that the bylaw, that Council had not tabled the bylaw for first reading, so there isn't one available for the public, and that your goal was to collect feedback. This suggests to me that unlike other municipalities, Strathmore Town Council is willing to listen to what the public has to say before rushing to implement a bylaw. Also, the fact that you're willing to engage the public at all puts you head and shoulders above Lethbridge, who felt the need to shut down all public engagement on the topic. So thank you for following due process, and thank you for the careful approach you have demonstrated so far. I'd like to state for the record that I oppose any therapy, including conversion and reparative therapies, that subjects an individual to abusive practices. I also condemn any mistreatment or unkindness towards LGBTQ persons in any form. If the definition of conversion therapy was focused on banning harmful and abusive practices, I wouldn't be standing before you today. The issue is that the proposed definition is so broad that it could impact my ability to live and practice my religion. It is also worded so broadly that it could impact my ability to instill within my children the values and moral conduct that I believe will help them to live safe, healthy, and happy lives. I'm a deeply religious person. For those of you on council who know me personally, I hope that I have lived my life consistent with my beliefs. I have no desire to hurt anyone. My only desire is to help my community, my church, and my family to grow and prosper. I believe in God. I'm not alone in believing in God. In our own nation's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it states that, quote, Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God. I also recognize the supremacy of God and the supremacy of His divine laws. I believe His divine laws, if followed, will lead to our happiness and prosperity, and if disobeyed, will lead to unhappiness and a halt in our progress. As a result, I teach His laws and encourage obedience and discourage disobedience to His laws to my children, to my fellow church members, and to my friends and community members who are willing to listen and who are searching for a better way. The issue for me is that the overly broad definition of conversion therapy that Town Council is considering includes wording that directly conflicts with God's divine laws and truths relating to sexuality and gender, as I believe them to be. I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm not here as an official representative of the church, but I am a faithful member of it. The church summarized God's laws and truths relating to sexuality and gender in a document that it published in 1995 entitled The Family, A Proclamation to the World, which teaches that each of us is a beloved spirit son or daughter of heavenly parents with a divine nature and destiny, and that our gender, meaning our biological sex at birth, is an essential characteristic of individual premortal, mortal, and eternal identity and purpose. It also teaches that marriage between a man and a woman is ordained of God, and that husbands and wives must honor marital vows with complete fidelity, and that the sacred powers of procreation are to be employed only between a man and a woman lawfully wedded as husband and wife. These fundamental moral standards apply regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. So now when I read the proposed definition of conversion therapy, and depending on how the town decides to define business, in some municipalities it has been defined so broadly to include parents and church leaders, it could prevent me from being able to teach and encourage obedience to God's truths as I understand them to be. For example, the town's proposed definition of conversion therapy specifically includes any practice designed to discourage gender identity or gender expression. According to my religious beliefs, our biological sex at birth is an essential characteristic of our individual premortal, mortal, and eternal identity and purpose. As a result, if someone is experiencing gender confusion or dysphoria, and I have responsibility for the care of that person, I would encourage them to be comfortable with their biological sex and discourage them from a gender transition. This is particularly the case if the person is a minor and could be making permanent changes that they could later regret. I would note that as recently as April of this year, the UK announced plans to actually ban medical gender transition of minors because, quote, before the age of 18, when people are still developing their decision-making capabilities, they should be protected from making decisions that are irreversible about their bodies that they could possibly regret in the future. Discouraging a person from such a life-altering transition seems to me to be the responsible and loving thing to do, as opposed to something that should be punishable by law. Another example is that the town's proposed definition includes, quote, any practice designed to repress or reduce sexual behavior. Repressing and reducing sexual behavior for appropriate times, places, and relationships is a fundamental and core aspect of my religious belief. And not just mine. God's law of chastity, that sexual relations should be reserved for marriage between a man and a woman, is a fundamental core doctrine of most major religions.
Sorry to interrupt, Jonathan, but we've come to beyond the 5-minute limit.
Okay.
I appreciate you presenting, and I appreciate the thought that you've put into it. And as I said at the start, we're still in the deciding and planning phase. Nothing is going on tonight other than we're going to be looking for a motion regarding directing administration to look at a bylaw.
Okay.
So I apologize for interrupting, but we have 3 other speakers. Is there a final statement you'd like to make?
I guess I would just say that I would urge Strathmore Council not to follow the path of Calgary City Councillors, of Calgary City Councillors, as I indicated in my written submission. I believe there is a better way, and that. And in their submission, they specifically indicated that their intent to draft an overly broad and punitive bylaw, which in fact I feel violates our fundamental charter freedoms. And so I thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for coming in and for taking an active interest in your community.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. I just want to verify, are you Emmanuel Sanchez?
That's right.
And thank you. If you wouldn't mind, again, sorry, just introduce yourself to the crowd, or to the crowd at home maybe. We could have a large crowd, I'm not sure. I just want to remind you, as I will for all the participants, you have a 5-minute presentation time, and then we'll have to go on to the next person. We are not passing a bylaw tonight. We are just possibly passing a direction to administration to start to look at crafting one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emmanuel, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my personal story with you. I was around 5 years old the first time I noticed I was attracted to the same sex. At first, I didn't pay much attention to the attraction. However, as I grew older, I began to notice it more and more. I endured a lot of bullying in school at the hands of other boys, and as a result of the bullying and previous abuse I had gone through, I drew near to girls in a desire for safety and protection. I was called fag, queer, and girly. This bullying really belittled me and caused me confusion. I began to question my sexual orientation and gender identity, and at the age of 12 years old, I severely hated myself and regretted being alive. I felt incredibly lonely during this time and didn't feel safe to confide in anyone. I thought my only option was to end my life. I'm so thankful that any attempts to do so failed. In my teen years, I began to explore gay culture on the internet. I deeply longed to understand my sexuality, who I was, and where I belonged. When I turned 16, I decided to identify as gay. I greatly feared rejection and ostracization from my family, friends, and faith community. I began to engage in same-sex relationships and visit gay bars in efforts to fully accept myself and embrace this new identity. Though not everyone in my life agreed with the decisions that I was making, they were all very loving, caring, and supportive of me as an individual. I was never asked or required to change my behavior or what I believed in order to belong. During this time, I was told by many outside the community I regularly surrounded myself with that as long as I was happy and living my truth, that's all that mattered. I agreed with them, or so I thought. As a 16-year-old, I realized that even though I was doing everything that society said would make me happy, I was still very unsettled. On my own initiative, I chose to regularly meet with a counselor who compassionately cared for me. She affirmed my sexual identity and encouraged me to continue living the life that I was living. Week after week, I would hear the same message, and I would leave feeling just as confused as I did when I walked in. Seeing as I was not getting the support I needed, I once again sought out counseling, this time from a pastor at a church. He was incredibly compassionate and caring, and neither affirmed nor condemned the decisions I was making or my sexual identity. In fact, we didn't even address those points at first. Instead, we began to tackle the difficulties I had walked through as a child. Each week I met with him, I was able to identify the lies I was believing about myself, and I began to experience a truth that restored my heart. Depression, anxiety, fear, and suicidal thoughts began to lift off of me. I started to see life differently and deeply loved it. Joy began to swell within me, and I started to see myself for who Jesus truly created me to be. As a result, I decided that I no longer wanted to continue on the course my life was on. I ceased to engage in same-sex relationships and instead sought to live my life in a way that was consistent with my faith and beliefs. I'm very thankful to have received the guidance and support I freely sought out. Had it not been for that, I don't think I would be breathing today and sharing this story with you. I want to be clear. I oppose and condemn any practice that abuses or coerces someone into a change they do not desire. I also want to be very clear that I oppose and condemn any bylaw that takes away the rights, freedoms, and choices of Canadian citizens. As a teenager, under a restrictive bylaw, I would not have received the help that I did, and therefore would not be around today. I ask that you create a well-written bylaw that truly bans coercive and abusive practices while respecting the individual's freedom to choose the type of support that they want. Please, do not restrict our freedom to explore our desires and longings in ways that are consistent with our views and faith. I trust that you will make a decision that will benefit every single citizen in the town of Strathmore. Let's move forward together and ensure that our land and people continues to be glorious and free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for being courageous enough to come forward and share your story with people you don't even know. So I appreciate that very much. Just want to reassure you that nothing's going to happen tonight. We are still in the early phases of looking towards a bylaw, but we appreciate your story and your comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome, and I'll just remind you, as well as our other presenters, that you have a 5-minute presentation time. And I just want to assure you that tonight we're not passing any bylaw or trying to pass any bylaw, that if the motion were to succeed tonight, we're just directing administration to start to work towards one.
Thank you.
So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, thank you.
Sure, thank you, Mayor Fuel, councillors, staff. My name is Jojo Ruba. I'm so glad to be able to share my experience with what's called conversion therapy as well. When I grew up in a religious home that had clear teachings on sexuality and gender and began to experience same-sex sexual attractions, that got me really confused. I'm sure you've heard this many times before. And I went as a part of my time in university to see a Christian counselor to talk through why I was feeling such a dysphoria, such an experience separate from my own religious teachings. And I want to explain to you what happened during those counseling sessions, because there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about what kind of counseling is being banned. At those counseling sessions, I got a chance to talk to someone who shared my faith, who shared with me the biblical texts that I agree with, who prayed with me, and who encouraged me to understand something that I still hold very dear today. That at the end of the day, I may not choose my sexual attractions, but I can choose my identity, and I can choose my behavior. And I knew that was so important to me that when I moved to Calgary 15 years ago, one of the first things I did in the first couple of months of my move there was to seek a Christian counselor to help me get that same kind of support. And that support didn't alter all my sexual attractions. I still have them, but they definitely reduced. and help me manage these sexual attractions. And I can say right now, and I say it as someone who's speaking to a bunch of strangers, I'm proud to be able to say I'm chaste, I'm a virgin, I follow the teachings of my faith as a Christian. And I've never been happier to live this way. See, right now, when I went and left that counseling session the first time I went to Calgary, I knew that I had the confidence I could always come back if I ever needed that help. Because of the bylaws that have been passed in Calgary and other places, that counseling that I received, that I felt joy from, I can no longer get. Because of three things the counseling bylaws, the conversion therapy bylaws have done. And these are the things I would encourage you as you draft your own laws, if it is necessary, to think about. First, the bylaws, both the federal and the municipal bylaws, conflate conversion therapy to include torture and conversations. There's absolutely no difference. Look at the definition given by the federal government. A practice, treatment, or service designed to change a person's sexual orientation to heterosexual or gender identity or cisgender, or to repress, reduce non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. What's being banned is not the practice. Some of these practices are already illegal, like torture. That's already against criminal code violations. Like forcible confinement, kidnapping, that's already against the law. What's actually being banned here is the goal of those practices. And by doing that, things like torture can now be banned in the same way as prayer. And municipal governments have actually included things like praying for someone to change their sexual orientation, just as someone prayed for me, as something that you would treat the same as torture. And I would ask you, city councilors, do you want to regulate prayer in your city? Is that what you're planning to do if you pass a bylaw? Secondly, the bylaws do not use the definition of conversion therapy used by health associations. So the Canadian Psychological Association and the Canadian Psychiatric Association, and I can submit these to you in formal documents, do not include the phrase reduction or repression of non-heterosexual attraction or sexual behavior. What they do say, the Canadian Psychiatric Association says reparative or conversion therapy is a range of pseudo-scientific treatments that aim to change a person's sexual orientation from homo to heterosexual. It does not include sexual behavior change, because all counseling changes someone's behavior. And sexual behavior change can include things like, if I go to a counselor and ask for help to reduce my addiction to pornography, that counselor can help me. But if that counselor realizes that my addiction is to gay pornography, that would now be considered conversion therapy and be something that they could be fined for doing. And as a youth pastor, I can tell you, when youth come to me and tell me about sexual issues or questions they have, I now have to think, am I going to violate this bylaw by simply teaching them what we always believe, that sex should be safe for husband and wife? By teaching that as a pastor, as a church leader in Calgary, because churches are considered businesses, we would be in jeopardy of violating this bylaw. That's the second issue here. And they're using a definition of conversion therapy these health associations don't even use. Lastly, the laws make no distinction between consent and coercion. That means coercive counseling. And by the way, all those torturous things that they talk about, I'm opposed to. We should all be that, because it's already illegal. The problem is people like myself who want this counseling, according to the municipal bylaws in Calgary, can no longer get them. And let me tell you, the federal government actually implicitly acknowledges this, because the federal law that's drafted only applies to conversations with parents and their kids, because they recognize they have no right to regulate conversations between consenting adults.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we've gone beyond the
Okay,
5 minutes.
Let me make one
If
closing
you wouldn't,
statement.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind
For
just
sure.
wrapping up, that would be great.
What's I think key for us to recognize here is all of these bylaws have been passed by municipal governments who said, don't worry, you will win in courts if religious organizations want to create these counseling agencies, because they're not allowed to torture people because of religion. But what's going to happen is religious people like myself who want this counseling will say, well, don't we have charter rights to have the conversations that we want? And will your bylaw test stand that test if we are able to say, look, you're banning our right to have a conversation? That's what your legal counsel should be thinking about. It isn't the religious groups that offer the counseling, it's the religious people who want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jojo. Thank you for your presentation.
Your Worship, are we allowed to ask questions of the speakers?
You know, that, I don't know. Yeah, sure. If you, do you want to ask a question? Sure.
Jojo, may I please ask you a question?
Of course.
When you were talking about you seeking support
Yes.
from your pastor, one of the recommendations to us was that we look at whether or not there was a money transfer or some
Yes.
type of transfer in order for it to be considered a transaction. Is that something that you did? Like, by us putting that in, would that have helped or hindered? And what was your experience with that?
Well, it's interesting because I get both support from a pastor who is paid in terms of my donations to the church, but I also got professional counseling as support as well that I paid for. So both of those things I want to have access to because I should have access to that. I shouldn't be discriminated against just because of my sexual orientation or gender identity. And that's exactly what's happened in these laws that are being passed in bylaws. If I was straight and asking for support, there would be no question of who can support me, pastor, unpaid, professional counseling. So why are we worried or applying a different standard to people who are looking for help for same-sex attraction? That would be what I would respond.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming tonight and presenting. And that brings us to our fourth presenter. Good evening and welcome tonight. And I would like you to introduce yourself, but I would just like to remind you that we have a 5-minute presentation time. Please don't be offended if I'll try to give you a little bit of leeway, but I may have to step in. And then I'll ask you to just wrap up quickly at that point. I just want to reassure you that we're not passing any bylaw tonight, that if a motion is passed tonight, it would be strictly to direct administration to begin work towards bringing something back to us to consider. So once again, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is David McPhail. I'm from Calgary. I'm a retired lawyer. And I heard the other presenters on the YouTube, so I have to repeat, I appreciate the thoughtful approach, which has not always taken place in other areas of Alberta. My presentation is mostly, I'm sorry, this thing keeps sliding down here, concerning some of the assertions made by those who are, I say, campaigning or advocating, I guess is a better word, in favor of a total ban on what's called conversion therapy. And I think the science is not as good as, not as settled as they would have you believe. And I've taken the time to review a document produced by an activist who's been active in this area in the province, and taken some of his assertions and some of the studies he's cited, and actually read the actual studies, and I found them a bit lacking. And I'd like to share a little bit. But maybe before I do that, I would encourage you just to press the pause button on this whole issue. As a lawyer, I don't profess to be an expert in this area, but there's a real doubt in my mind, and I'm not the only one, that a municipality even has the jurisdiction to totally ban a particular medical or psychiatric practice. Secondly, of course, there's the question of freedom of speech. Can the state, any government, the state, step in and regulate private conversations, the expression of beliefs? Because that's what a lot of this is about, if you're looking at something like what Calgary has done. And thirdly, of course, the federal government has tabled a law, which may be passed in the next couple of months, dealing with this, which would likely supersede anything you do. So I'm not sure you're going to necessarily accomplish a lot, and you may find yourself, if a case comes up in Strathmore, with a lawsuit that you may well lose. So for all those reasons, I think you should just press the pause button. I'm going to try and give you one or two more here. One of the assertions made is conversion therapy, especially when given to minors, is always ineffective and harmful. And the study that's cited here is from California, and I read it. And there are serious deficiencies in that study, which would lead one to not necessarily buy the conclusion. For one thing, only LGBT adults were surveyed I use the shortened phrase because this study was done about 12 years ago or so. In other words, those children grew up and are now LGBT adults. Well, of course, if you only survey the children who now identify as LGBT, you've already surveyed only a population for whom the study was unsuccessful. But of course, they'll say it was unsuccessful. In many cases, maybe it wasn't very enjoyable. I don't know. They found, of course, that this population had a higher incidence of depression and suicidal thoughts and things that, negative consequences. But of course, what's missing from the data are those who found it successful. There's nothing in the data about that. Also, there was no differentiation as to what those efforts were by the parents. Was it a quiet, supportive chat around the kitchen table? Or were there beatings, intimidation, and kicking the young person out of the house? Was there a Bible study with an understanding youth pastor? Or was it electroshock therapy? One can imagine entirely different results, depending on how the efforts were handled. There was no effort to determine whether each child supported the effort. In any therapy, the willingness of the patient or the client is critical to success. There is no information on what each child believed about the normality or desirability of homosexuality, or what their peers or others in authority taught them in comparison to what their parents taught. What a person believes to be true has enormous effect on their view of what kind of person they are or the kind of person they can become. There is no information on whether the child believed that it is possible or desirable to change sexual orientation. If the child believed, for example, that it is not desirable or possible to change, that child will more likely resist the efforts and have a negative view. So these are important data points that are necessary to interpret a proper conclusion. So it appears that certainly in some cases, whatever those efforts were, they did not succeed and were possibly harmful. Fair enough. But what efforts were they? What was the child's attitude? All these circumstances are missing. And so you cannot just say all efforts always end badly and are unsuccessful. Another statement that's often made is there's no credible evidence that indicates you can change a person's sexual orientation. Well, I heard these other two fellows testify otherwise from their personal experience this evening. But also the studies cited actually often show that conversion therapy, I don't really like the word conversion, I'll just call it therapy, did reduce or eliminate homosexual orientation. The people, in this case, the largest study involved 882 people who underwent sexual orientation change therapy. And to quote, over 67% of the participants indicated they were exclusively or almost exclusively homosexual at one time in their lives, whereas only 12.8% indicated they now perceive themselves. This was an average of 6.7 years later. So the changes,
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
I knew I'd be done.
okay.
So-
And if you wouldn't mind just concluding for us,
I'll
thank
wrap
you.
up. So there are problems just with the methodology of the data collection and the methodology of just a lot of information, a failure to distinguish a lot of things that fall under the label of conversion therapy. As I say, there are cases, I guess, I suspect in the US where you had hormone injections, chemical castration, electroshock. That's called conversion therapy. That is quite another creature from having a supportive conversation for someone who maybe wants to change. They're all labeled conversion therapy and they're all banned. That is a problem, and that's really my point, and the scientific studies bear that out.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your, obviously, your hard work researching the various studies. It's much appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no question, okay.
Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Those are all the speakers who registered for tonight's session, and with the close of the public engagement portion for the potential bylaw, administration is seeking your direction on drafting a prohibited business bylaw based on this public feedback.
Thank you. And just, before any kind of a motion might come forward, I'm sure we have a few things we'd like to say. One of the things, so we don't have to do any kind of amendments, I was a little concerned from the get-go as far as that date of October 21st being a bit sudden for us to try to put this through with all the things that our staff and administration are going through right now. So I'll take comments from councillors. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Worship. I've received a number of texts during that exchange, and they're from people that are wondering whether or not there's another opportunity for them to come and speak for the conversion therapy bylaw, the proposed. And I was wondering when that next opportunity may be, if we were to put this through for the October 21st regular meeting.
Sorry, we were just trying to figure out what was making all that
That
noise.
was, I think that was my phone being close to the mic. I'm very
My
sorry.
question,
able to hear
Jeff, is
that?
whether or not there will be another opportunity for public engagement from people that are on the pro side rather than just the four that have spoken against.
Sure. Well, so we only planned for one in-person feedback session. We can extend the process as much as council directs us.
I don't know if administration, following Councillor Bauer's comments, we've heard from four people who oppose it. Would it be fair to have if four people want to come opposing the conversion bylaw? Is that a fair thing, or did we give enough notice to people to come forward if they wanted to? I'm sure you went through the communication process.
So did you want to? Okay. So we did a 6-week engagement period and so we had a very steady number of survey responses that came in as well. I think that whether someone submitted it in writing or whether somebody submitted something in person, I think that that's still feedback. That's still valid feedback. And so I think that rather than seeing it as 4 against and 0 for, I think that in my opinion, all the feedback should be viewed together. And that the weight of that total feedback is public sentiment.
And I know council has read through all of these. There's a great many comments about going against conversion therapy. So I think there's been that opportunity through your communication plan. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I personally would like to have more time to engage public and just find out whether or not we can have one more session for people to come and speak in favor or opposed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Almost forgot now. Yeah, first of all, Jeff, thanks a lot for putting all this together. I appreciate it. A question that I have is a lot of the feedback responses were just blank, like there was nothing. So what do you make of those ones?
So I did put a little addendum at the bottom of the cover page there.
Yeah.
No matter how clear you can make something, not everybody always understands the process. So in the case of the survey feedback, several things could have happened. Either they thought that just by adding their name and contact information, that they had indicated support or against for the bylaw. I'm not going to interpret what they thought there. Or they added their name, they got interrupted, or they chose not to continue, and so then they just didn't submit any comments.
Okay.
I left it in there just because I don't want to give the impression to the public that we've somehow censored their feedback or that we've decided that didn't have merit. So I left it in there just for complete transparency with the public.
Okay, thank you. Another question I had that came to mind was just, I noticed that a number of people were not from the community. And so when we kind of say to put a bylaw together that reflects community input, would we be including people that aren't from the community as part of that input, I guess?
So, I guess, thank you for that. We had 184 written responses. Of those, 157 identified as from being from Strathmore, and 115 of those provided comments. So, the majority of people who provided comments were from Strathmore.
Okay.
Because of the nature of us living in a region, I didn't want to put it just to Strathmore, because yes, this affects our residents, but it also affects our businesses.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who do commute into Strathmore to conduct their business.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that answer and good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I have Councillor Peterson, who's been frantically trying to get my attention.
Thank you, Jeff. I was wondering if you have any indication as to when the federal bylaw will come to the table.
So the federal bylaw has gone through a little bit of a process there. It was first tabled in March.
Yes.
And then like the proroguing of Parliament interrupted that, so it's being retabled. One of the comments that we had made early on, I think during when we presented the engagement session to council, was that because it is a minority government, there's no guarantee that any kind of federal legislation can pass. It's all in the hands of minority government right now. So I think that that would be. There's no clear timetable with the federal legislation, and there's no guarantee that just because it's put out right now that it would pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before I make my comments, just in regards to Councillor Bauer's request or suggestion, I don't know that I want another day for this, but is there anything wrong with if any member of council was to receive correspondence, or administration for that matter, correspondence in the next period of time until this bylaw makes it to our desk? I see nothing wrong with those comments being passed on to all of council, just to ensure that we're all, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I'm not so sure that a personal visit is required. If a statement or a comment wishes to be made, then it could just be passed on to council. So that would be my only thought there. In regards to the matter of hand, I first wish to extend a sincere thanks to administration who've dealt with this matter in a professional, educational, and all-inclusive manner since its inception in February of 2020. The community feedback portion, which is what I wish to comment on, was no exception. Of the roughly 200 responses that administration received, there was a vast majority who expressed support for this bylaw, and some who were surprised that there was currently no law in existence that prohibited conversion therapy. However, about 11% of respondents had concerns, and it's to those people that I address my comments now. To those who expressed grave concerns that this bylaw would hinder or prevent people discussing one's sexuality or providing advice or counseling, including spiritual, I want to assure you that this was never a goal I envisioned when I brought this bylaw proposal forward, nor would these be ingredients that I would support. To those who have concerns, I ask for patience until the actual bylaw is presented to council. To those who feel that this is a violation of a business person's charter rights, I believe that you will see nothing in the proposed bylaw that will stop a person from having or discussing their personal beliefs. Municipalities regularly restrict some aspects of business, be it noise control or hours of operation, or in which area of the municipality they can operate in. The courts have stipulated in many instances that one of the reasons which can justify municipalities' interference with business is in regards to the health of the community. Which brings me to the last group I wish to address. To those who feel that this matter either exceeds council's jurisdiction or is simply not what we are empowered to do, I'll quote the Municipal Government Act, which states clearly that one of the main purposes of a municipality is to develop and maintain safe and viable communities. It is not in my nature to pass on a responsibility to keep my community safe to another level of government. Keeping our citizens safe is something every council should be focusing on, and in my opinion, is certainly well within my area of responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. We go to Councillor Cox and then Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I did read through a lot of them, and I guess I have a couple questions. There was one that stuck out that I've found and pulled out. I personally have a problem with the business aspect of the proposed bylaw. I also want to know, I also have a problem with the portion of conversion therapy that does discuss conversations. But I want to know, like, I 100% agree with Councillor Sobel in that I do not want harm to come to any of our constituents. I don't want to see that. But do we know of any practices where this is happening to the extent of harm in our community? Because is it really? And is this our place? I'm not 100% on board with that. Because what I think that we're trying to do with this bylaw is create a safe place. But I'm unclear as to, isn't it already a safe place? I don't believe the conversion therapy that is harmful is happening here in Strathmore. So is there a need for this, and can we not wait and see what is happening in government? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, excuse me, thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Worship. I think that what we've received this evening is just a small sample of the population in Strathmore that feels for and against this topic. I see no reason to rush this decision. And I think that once this meeting is aired and the public becomes aware that we are having this conversation, it's even more imperative to dig a little deeper and find out what our constituents feel and if this is happening in our community. If it is, we do have responsibility to protect the safety of our residents and to protect those most vulnerable, the minority people of our community that believe that they don't have a voice, because sometimes the only voice that they reach out to is someone on the distant end of a computer. And so I really would urge this council to think about at least looking at this in November, or having another consultation October 21st, because I do think that once the media becomes aware of this with our Strathmore Times and our Strathmore Now reporting what's happening here and the conversations from not only the delegates, but I don't know if they will have access to the feedback forms as part of the agenda package, but I hope that those also become public. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I hesitate too to put I've said it at the start, October 21st just seems incredibly rushed, and I would like to take a little more time too. I do have concerns that if we do draft something and the federal government comes up with something that would oppose even part of it, it would be problematic for us. And so I would like us to take obviously more time, even just from our staff and administration point of view. I do have a question coming in from Councillor Peterson, because she's saying that some feedback she's concerned about being heard. So I will do my best Denise Peterson impersonation. I don't have as many big words though as usual. Okay, so this is from Councillor Peterson. When I watched the Calgary Council's presentation, I think the Justice Center said that if a building owner had a business renting who practices conversion therapy, the building owner would be fined. Do you know if this is true? And then would we have another public consultation once first reading is passed? So that's a question to admin, and I guess a question to admin or Jeff, if you've heard about the Calgary bylaw concerning a business renting, and whether that owner of the building would be fined if the renter is practicing conversion therapy under the bylaw.
I hadn't heard that, and I'm sorry, until I go back and get a law degree, I think that I would be the first person to ask.
I guess that would be something we could direct administration as part of working towards a possible bylaw coming to us. You could look into that aspect as well.
Your Worship. Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say that I really. What Councillor Peterson suggests there, I think is really smart, is that what we didn't lay out when we laid out our engagement strategy was what would happen after first reading. So I think that if we did 20 more engagement sessions, that's still not going to void the need for engagement after a first reading of the bylaw, because whatever that bylaw looks like, people are going to have input on that. So I think that if, I would be wary of spending all of your time, or not all your time, but a lot of time on this phase with the expectation that that will make things easier down the road.
So
I think
it
that-
might be more efficient to wait for public engagement until the bylaw is crafted and it goes to first reading? or-
that would be my suggestion.
Okay, okay. So Jennifer, the question about public consultation after first reading, that seems appropriate to administration as well? So as far then as a recommendation, are we still looking at directing you to draft a bylaw, but giving you a lot more time and parameters to come forward with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Corbio,
And Doug.
and then Doug, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a quick comment too. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea, in my mind anyways, to halt. It seems like it would be a lot of wasted time and a lot of, just administration time if the federal government is bringing one forward. I know we can't really wait for them forever and there's no guarantees. I'm not sure. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree, right now, we're kind of in a vague area. We haven't got anything in front of us, nothing in front of the public. And so if we wait to have administration work towards bringing something to us, then once it gets to first reading, then people can zero in on things that are really bothering them in the community. Doug, do you want to weigh in?
To you, Mr. Mayor, you don't even need to make a decision tonight that you want to have a bylaw drafted. If you want 2 weeks or 3 weeks, a month to think about what direction you want to go, take that time. Just direct us as when you want this back on the agenda before you, and then you can provide direction to administration as what you'd like to have done. There is no rush on this.
Okay. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, whatever, if a bylaw comes forward, I would like to see with that bylaw a legal opinion that talks about the constitutionality or how it would, stand up to a charter challenge, essentially, just so that we know what we're walking into. Thank you.
Councillor Bauer, thank you, Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Montgomery just brought up a very good point, and something that I've been kind of wrestling with too, because if the federal government passes this, then it becomes part of the criminal code, right? Like, and it is against the criminal code. It's a criminal offense. Whereas if we pass a bylaw, they get a slap on the wrist and a fine. So I'm kind of like, I'd like to wait and see what the federal government is doing, because I think that it's better handled in with their resources and their expertise, and I would like to wait at this point. Thank you, Jeff.
Do you need any kind of an emotion? Not an emotion. I have a lot of emotions. But you don't need an emotion as far as directing you to bring it back at a later time?
No, Your Worship, you could just give us a motion to accept it for information at this time.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Corbeil, did you have something you wanted to toss in?
Going to do that.
Oh, perfect. I'm looking forward to that then.
I move to accept the information from whatever. Move to accept the information.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor to accept all the information presented in text and in person as information then? Oh, sorry, Denise Peterson, did you have a comment now that we have a motion on the floor?
No, voting.
Oh, okay, so you've all heard the motion. Any further discussion on that motion? All in favor? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And to the people who are at home, or the presenters who are at home, this is an early stage for this town council to consider, and we want to make sure that we do the absolute right thing for the benefit and health of our community. And the Municipal Government Act does allow us to make decisions based on protecting and securing the health of a municipality. But we want to make sure we do the absolute right thing, so we're going to take more time on this. And as Councillor Montgomery and others have stated, we have to make sure that it's going to stand up to the test of time based on what the federal government may do as well. So thank you to everyone, and thank you, Jeff, for all your work in the public engagement. That brings us to the Strathmore Municipal Building meeting room names, which I think is on page 20. Ethan, I see there's no names after me on any of the suggestions that have come forward. There's no fuel room. Just thought I'd point that out.
It may have been written in once or twice.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was one of the candidates. Thank you and welcome, Ethan. We look forward to your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Here tonight to bring forward suggestion for meeting room names for our new municipal building. Our Signage Committee, which is made up of a member of council, a couple of staff members, our signage consultant, and a couple members from the public, came up with themes to base these meeting room names around. Those themes were historical Strathmore, the CPR and the CPR demonstration farm, the Western Irrigation District, and agricultural farming. These are all key portions of our history. From that, we came around and made up 3 different names for each theme. So that was a total of 12 names. Those 12 proposed names then went to public vote. From the public vote is where we got the results in the top 5 that are shown here in the agenda item. We did get some feedback through write-ins. There was some comments about the Origins Room being kind of a promotion for a local business, and that was never the intent. And there was also a couple of people wrote about honoring veterans. We did discuss internally about veterans, and we wondered if a room is the appropriate way to either honor a veteran or veterans in general. So that one wasn't included, but we could discuss it if you wish. So from here, the next option, the 6th most voted one, was the Champion Room. So what we're left with is the Golden Fields Room, the Strathmore Standard Room, the Canal Room, the Watershed Room, and the Champion Room. This would be our recommendation for 5 of the 6 rooms. The largest room, which is intended to be the in-camera meeting and also a large meeting room for administration, we would like to reserve that for an Indigenous name. We are working with the people of Siksika Nation on what an appropriate name for that room would be, and we'd like to continue that engagement and determine what an appropriate name for that room would be. So with this, we would like to recommend the 5 names, which were 5 out of the top 6 voted, and then continue our consultation with the Siksika Nation on determining the 6th name for the largest room. Questions?
Thank you very much, Ethan. Do we have questions or comments from council?
Yes, Your Worship.
Oh, Councillor Peterson, and then, you're not doing a motion though, are you? Okay.
No, not at all. I wanted to thank Ethan for the work that he did on this project and for the community consultation. But I also just want to remind council the context that was given to council at the beginning of this, that this community consultation would come forward for council's regard for their consideration, but council would not be tied to that. So there's still, Ethan, I think I'm correct in saying there's still lots of opportunity for council to have input to this.
Yes, Councillor, if council has suggestions on different names, we're definitely open to that. We are in the process of starting the signage, but by all means, if there is a desire to make alternative options or different names, we can do that.
The other question I have, Ms. Wilson, whether or not the rest of the council received the letter that Tom Sadler wrote.
No, I don't believe so, and that would be my mistake, but I do have it and I could share it if you wish.
I think it would be really valuable even if you just gave a Reader's Digest version. Thank you.
Yeah, so quickly, Mr. Sadler wrote an email, but it was from him and another member of the public. The two of them were somewhat in favor of the names, but they did come up with a couple of alternative suggestions. One would be the Prairie Rose Room. There was some disappointment in the way that the survey was done. He references Facebook, and I know Facebook was generally the way we advertised it. There was a couple other ways through our website that it was advertised. And I know in the times of COVID, it's hard to do other ways of survey, so that was what we did rely on. So a bit of a fallback there potentially. Overall, Mr. Sadler did also note the veterans, and he did also note, sorry, I just want to read it quickly. He did come up with a bunch of other suggestions. So if there are certain ones, he kind of questioned whether names need to reflect a theme or if we could go more broad. I guess just a backstory, before we went into the themes, we wanted to stay away from names in general because it was a question of who do you honor, what would be the criteria? Is it somebody that has to be living or deceased? Does it have to be somebody who has not been within the public realm? There's a lot of criteria that we would have to go through, and we thought it was better to just avoid people names in general, so.
Oh, now we can't hear her at all, but she is talking.
Sorry, Ethan, one of the follow-ups to that, too, was Tom gave an opportunity, and it wouldn't necessarily need to be rooms, it could also be hallway, but he talked about utilizing local flora and fauna as names to other parts of the buildings. And he was really encouraging about the names that have been chosen, except for the order. But the other thing that in talking, so their use of traditional plants and their use of their regard, I guess their high regard for sacred plants, it also fits in with that naming theme, if we decide to go that way. And I don't have any consideration personally for that one way or the other, but it is something that we could talk about. For instance, Saskatoon berry is critical to every aspect. It forms a part of all of their ceremonies and has a key role to play.
Sorry, Denise, we're losing a lot of what you're saying.
Never mind. You know what?
Move to accept that recommendation.
I'm sorry. It's Microsoft Teams. It's not as good as Zoom on terms of microphone access. The only thing I wanted to say really was that the Saskatoon berry has a really easy to pronounce Blackfoot name, and that's something we might want to consider. And I just want to, again, thank you, Ethan. Thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Ethan, for all of this. I'm personally not ready to accept those 5 names. I really would like to see something honoring the veterans. If you come back to us with something else, that's fine. But I find I like the Strathmore Standard Room name because it actually relates and people can relate to it. But the rest of them seem very vague to me, and I understand. A very difficult job, and I actually don't want to be a part of it. But I do believe that we are lacking something for the veterans, and I think that's a very important piece. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Bauer and then Councillor Sobel. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Ethan, for your presentation. I just have a couple questions and suggestions. I'm not quite ready to go with these names. I sometimes believe, like a house, that before you hang your art, you need to live in it a little while. And you need to kind of see what kind of personality it has before you decide to put things up. And I don't know if we've done, just a good enough job thinking about some of these things that I don't think we need to put the names on the actual rooms before we move in. Because, certain things just kind of develop personality as you go. We do have an amazing opportunity to honor our veterans because Strathmore is so unique in that all able-bodied men of age went to the war. And there's got to be some way we can work with the Legion and figure out how we can capitalize, no, that's the wrong word, capture that sentiment, which is, so unique to our town. And I also was wondering, when we were first opening up the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Centre, we heavily relied on sponsorship. Was there any thought given to sponsoring these rooms and make it kind of a rotating thing where, for a year at a time, a different company or nonprofit group could sponsor a room, and they would be allowed access to that room for free of charge, to be able to use it as meeting space, and then we would constantly rotate that on a yearly basis, and then also be able to have some revenue from that.
I would say it's an opportunity, but at the same time, we've thought about this, and then the perception of sponsored government is where we kind of thought, and whether that is a good perception or not.
Fair,
so,
yes, very fair point, thank you.
As far as sponsoring a meeting room and then using it, I would say the only room in the building that could potentially do that would either be council chambers or the room that we're planning to use an Indigenous name for. So again, it would be sponsored government if we're doing council chambers. So that would be my only recommendation against it. Of course, if council wishes to do that, we could go through it.
Okay, so maybe we could even look at something where nonprofit groups apply to council or make a presentation, and we could, month to month or a quarterly basis, give them access. That could be something. I want this to be a public building that people take pride in, and I'm just trying to, think of ways in order to do that. But thank you. Those are really good points, and I appreciate you having put the thought into it and being able to answer my question so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you. So I'm just a little, I guess, disappointed in some of the comments from council. It was us who approved the process, the consultation process that sent this young man out to the public with. The public, he's complied with everything we've asked him, including public consultation, public voting. These are the names that they've come up with. It concerns me that we approve a process and then say, oh, we don't like the end result of the process. The other way to do this was for us as a council to name these rooms. We decided not to do that, and it's just disappointing that we're putting a blockage on further work on this. I know Ethan said that they're just getting ready to put the signs together. I have no problem with doing something for the veterans, but and I'm sure as Ethan said at the beginning of his presentation that they're considering something. So I'm ready with a motion to move these names, Your Worship.
Okay, once you have a motion on the floor, we can discuss a little bit further. Sorry, Councillor Corbett.
Can I do my comment quick first? I think it'll kind of go align with it.
Sure.
Thank you, Ethan, for your presentation. I do have a couple quick questions, and then I think I have a suggestion. How many people completed the survey?
It's just under 150, I believe.
Oh, nice. I agree. We kind of did do this process the way that we did. My only suggestion, I think in order to finish some of these rooms, they need to be named. Because, like a Golden Fields room, it'll kind of take on and give it that thing. Same with like the watershed room. Like these are names that the public did choose. My only suggestion would be to do the top 4 and then leave the 5th as for the veterans, as the 6th. Just because it's, with the Origins and a very close champion room and stuff like that. That would be my only suggestion, and that's something that I would be more than happy to make a motion with. But.
So some of the comments that we did receive, some were against the champion room as well. So if, from what you're saying, the top 4, and then leave a 5th for a veteran possibility, I'm open to that as well.
Like, you could even do the Legion room for all, it wouldn't even matter to me, just as long as you can do it like for the veterans and stuff like that. But I think in talking to the Legion, I think if we did those, I'm not sure how the rest of council feels about that, but that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the things that would be good about your suggestion is it's a bit of a compromise between accepting all of them and still looking for a way to possibly honor the veterans. Before you jump in, Councillor Sobel, again, Councillor Peterson has been flagging me down, so buckle up.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to acknowledge what what Melanie and Councillor Corbeil and Councillor Sobel said, I think that it's really key that we honor this process. But when I said that council still has opportunity for input, there are lots of spaces in this building that could have names. Lots of spaces left, and I'm sure Ethan could speak to that much more eloquently than I could. But this is not the end of the opportunity. And the other thing that I want to speak to is what Councillor Corbeil said about needing the name that can go with the decor of the room or the colors. And this committee talked a lot about color schemes, and we took council's input into consideration at some length. And that is a really big consideration going forward. So Ethan is absolutely right in what he says about that timeliness is of some concern. Thank you, Your Worship.
If I may quickly here, to extend on what Councillor Peterson was saying, that a big area that we could name for something or someone is our atrium. I believe you guys are getting an opportunity to see the building here soon. And when you see it, you'll understand the size of the room and the ability to use that space to honor someone or something. So that's definitely an opportunity in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Sobel.
So just before I make my motion, so that the atrium, and that's kind of what was going through my mind here. It's unnamed at this point.
Exactly.
Veterans Hall or something along that line would perhaps fit.
Absolutely could be.
So I'm going to make the motion, Your Worship, with the names presented by the public and the committee. And no, I won't make this part of the motion, but I would anticipate that you'll be back in the near future with a possible name that would honor the veterans.
Okay.
That fair enough? And that's not a direction, it's just, it's more of a question.
Yeah, may I clarify, are you thinking of veterans for a meeting room or veterans for the atrium?
Well, my motion is going to be for these 5 rooms to be
Okay.
named as
Yep,
is.
that works.
So I would move.
Sorry, just before you
Yeah.
jump in there, my only concern is, and I think it's just that if any of council has a difficulty with one name, it's going to mean that the motion's
Yeah.
not, you're okay with that then?
Well,
Okay.
it's the way it is. That's what the public have recommended. So I move that council confirm the names for 5 meeting rooms as recommended in this report, and that council direct administration to continue working with representatives of Siksika Nation to determine a name for the 6th and largest meeting room.
Thank you, and we have a motion on the floor, so Councillor Cox, you can speak first.
Can I ask for just a friendly amendment to that motion, Councillor Sobel?
I'm all ears.
Can we add on and just say, and give the direction to the veterans? Like as you're saying, to continue with.
So to continue on, determine a
with-
name for the 6th and largest meeting room, as well as a name honoring the veterans.
Thank you.
And that's it. I'll just leave it like that. Or a location in honor of the veterans.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, which means we can have discussion now. Councillor Bauer.
So then that means that number 5, Origins Room would stand. Is that correct?
I think they've substituted champion.
Yeah, champion.
The 6th name,
It's under conclusion on that page.
okay, just because the motion says confirm the names for 5 meeting rooms.
Yes, it would be
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Any other comments from the councillors?
So
Councillor Cox?
I'm just going to read them so that we are all on the same page. So we would have the Golden Fields Room, Strathmore Standard Room, Canal Room, Watershed Room, and Champion Room. Okay.
Any other comments or discussions on that motion? Then I guess we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And we have, we have opposed? So we have 6 in favor and 1 opposed, so the motion carries. And then, obviously, you've received our direction to consider something for the veterans in the future.
Yep.
And we can go ahead with those. While we're on this topic, I don't know if everybody knows this, but when Golden Hills was being created as a school division, we were able to submit name suggestions. And I had submitted Sparky, the school division, but it was voted down for Golden Hills. So that was really disappointing. Funny how that works, eh? All right, we're on to 9.3, Letter of Understanding, Siksika Nation, RCMP, and Town of Strathmore, which is on page 212.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is fairly straightforward. This is an agreement that has been worked on some time between Siksika Nation and the town and the RCMP. I believe Councillor Sobel was behind a big part of this. If he wishes to address it, that will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Doug. So approximately 16 months ago, under the leadership and support of Strathmore Mayor Pat Fuel and then Siksika Nation Government Chief Joseph Wieselchild, our 2 councils began a series of meetings and discussions. Our joint action plan was simple: to improve relationships between Siksika Nation and Strathmore as friends, neighbors, and economic partners, and to promote and implement an understanding of mutual respect with the goal of eradicating racism through education and awareness. A number of priority areas were identified, among them education, sports, economy and employment, human services, housing, and law enforcement. The responsibilities for these plans was divided among staff and council members, and over the months there have been personnel changes. The goals and focus, however, have never changed. I am proud to have remained on the law enforcement action plan since its inception and can only express my admiration and appreciation for all the effort and work done on this project with Siksika Councillor Ruben Buckbreaker, who was also there at the beginning. Together, we were able to initiate discussions with various members of the RCMP, including Chief Superintendent Trevor Daru of the Southern Alberta District RCMP. Those discussions is what brings us to this point. The letter of understanding that sits before council this evening is one that has been designed by the members of the Law Enforcement Siksika Strathmore Subcommittee, has been reviewed extensively by various levels of the RCMP administration, and consequently reviewed and approved by the current Siksika Nation Council government under the leadership of Chief Ori Crowfoot. Should this council approve the document as it exists, the next exciting step would be for the 3 parties to sign the document in the near future. I encourage support and acceptance of the document as written, and am prepared to make a motion when it's appropriate to do so, Your Worship.
Would you like to make that motion now, and then if there's discussion, we can have it following the motion?
I would be pleased to. I would move that council accept the letter of understanding between Siksika Nation, RCMP, and the town of Strathmore as presented.
Thank you for that motion, and now we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. There is? Denise? Oh, sorry, Councillor Peterson. Or were you voting?
I know I was not.
Or do you think you're at an auction again? Just waving around.
I want that microphone where I can mute you. So I just wanted to thank Councillor Sobel. His input into this with his career in the RCMP has been invaluable, not just to our council, but also to this whole process. And he was the fulcrum on which this rode, and his work in it is really wonderful for everybody concerned. And I think will have a tremendously positive impact on our initiative to address anti-racism throughout our communities. So I just really want to pass on my profound thanks.
Thank you for that. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And Councillor Peterson's in favor, so it's passed unanimously. And again, thank you for all your work on that, Councillor Sobel. You brought a great deal of expertise and experience to it. Also want to thank all of council who worked so hard in the memorandum of understanding. This council has worked really hard to try to work on their subcommittees with Siksika Nation to try to better the situation in Strathmore for their residents on the nation, as well as their residents who are in our town. So thank you to all of you. And that brings us to policy 1806, council remuneration and expense policy, page 216. Jennifer. Oh, Deborah.
Thank you, Your Worship. In June of this year, Council approved a council procedural bylaw change to have the Committee of the Whole meetings at 9 a.m. every second Wednesday of the month. At that time, Council requested administration to make a change to the council remuneration policy. With that, currently in that policy, the Committee of the Whole meetings are included in the council's base salary. However, with the Committee of the Whole start change time to the daytime hours, this may have a financial impact on some of the councilors working during the day. We have made the changes to the remuneration policy, which will allow councilors to claim per diems for the Committee of the Whole meeting, included in the amount that's already allotted for councilors. We are also requesting that council may make this change retroactively to include the Committee of the Whole meetings that have already taken place for the year.
Thank you for that presentation, Deborah. Are there any comments? I guess we could have a motion come forward and then have discussion after. And there was a dramatic pause.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I move that council approve the amendments to policy 1806, council remuneration and expense policy as presented.
Thank you, and I thought for the first time in a while, I thought I'd start discussion on this, and then I'll go to Councillor Sobel. To people out there who might be concerned about this, as far as, we've always had nighttime meetings and councillors knew what they signed up for. I just want to point out that this was a change that was made to try to save money for the town. And so some councillors were caught in a situation where they were expecting evening meetings, and then it shifted to once a month daytime meetings. So in essence, they were being penalized because we made this change to save the town money, and they were left in a situation where they were losing salary to try to attend. I also think that the money that they will be claiming for per diems for attending these morning meetings will be far less than when we ran that once a month meeting in the evening over a year or over the span of a term. So I just wanted to put that out there for the public in case they have some strong concerns. At least you'll understand what our thought process was. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. You've actually talked about much what I wanted to talk to, but in perhaps a different light. The primary purpose of changing the Committee of the Whole meetings was basically for monetary savings. Charging to attend these meetings by council seems to fly in the face of that purpose, and I'm unable to support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I cannot support this motion. I believe that this council needs to show our community that we understand the grim realities that everyone in this community is facing. We have double-digit unemployment, businesses facing really difficult decisions and ever greater hardships. And from my perspective, I want this community to know that we know that they are suffering. And also that instead of increasing our income, that maybe instead we can, Councillor Sobel and I before talked about a decrease, but at the very least that we understand their hardships, and I could not support this motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cox and then Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just need some clarification, Deborah. This remuneration is not, it's not councillors asking for more money. We are only asking to be able to dip into what we already have, correct?
That's correct. Your remuneration amount is $4,000 per year, and that would not change. It just allows you to claim the Committee of the Whole meeting out of that money.
So the budget would not change, our wages would not go up, but if you chose to use this on committee of the whole meetings, you just wouldn't be able to use it for anything else.
That's correct. Your limit would still be the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just before I go to Councillor Bauer, just for the public who are watching at home or the media at home, just because a councillor makes a motion like this for the remuneration to be considered for committee of the whole meetings, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person wants to have that money. We have to have that motion put on the floor so we can discuss it and either pass it or turn it down. So I just wanted to clear that up too. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm just looking at our base salary of $32,367, and that is not going to change with this motion. We are in no way asking for, no more money. I believe that this motion affects me, and so I'm really wanting to just put it out there and speak on it. So I have been asked to substitute teach 4 times since the induction of this committee of the whole on the mornings of the Wednesday mornings, second Wednesday of the month. And I would be essentially able to dip in for the amount that I would be entitled, which would be about $200. So I am asking this council to make it retroactive so that I can access $800 out of my expenses rather than have it spent on business expenses. Instead, it would be spent on the time that I would come for a committee of the whole meeting rather than teaching for that afternoon or morning. And honestly, that amount, being that we're not in any way adding to the council remuneration, does not in any way impact our budget. It still saves this council and this town a considerable amount of money, because it's really the amount that we were paying for our directors that were attending the meeting for a whole day. And their salaries are considerably more than what we get as a remuneration for being a councillor. So that's really where the cost savings was. It was in administration, not in council. So I just want to put that out there and just say that I think this is a very small amount, even if it were to go forward, that we would be responsible for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Worship. I also think, Councillor Bauer, that you are not the only one that works during the day. I too work during the day. But I also want to reiterate the questions that I did pose. The cost savings that changing the committee of the whole meetings to the mornings is still 100% in effect. There is no cost, no larger cost that we are asking for. This is an already budgeted amount. It is not going up. It is not costing taxpayers any more money than before.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
I'm not so sure how we can, I mean, you can slice this any way you want, but at the end of the day, whatever dollars we have comes from one pot, and I appreciate that council has a budget, but at the end of the day, they're all tax dollars. And if they're not spent on this, I don't think it's fair to say they could be spent somewhere else. If they're not spent on this, they're not spent anywhere, because this is a new opportunity to spend money. And if there's 2 claiming $200 for 11 meetings, that's $4,400 a year. And I know $4,400 apparently may not seem like a lot of money, but in this day and time, I think it is. And I don't understand why we keep saying that it's not going to add to our budget. It will use more tax dollars that might still be in the budget at the end of the current year if they weren't spent. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery, did you light up? I mean, why do I do that? Any other comments? Any other discussion points? Then, Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to follow up from what Councillor Sobel said, and I just have a question for administration. So I know that very, very often council's expenditures, allowable expenditures, aren't utilized. And when they aren't utilized, where do they go into the budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, any funds that are not expended stay within the general fund, and if we have a surplus at the end of the year, they go into the accumulated surplus fund, which are used in future years.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other comments? Then I'll call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? So the motion is defeated, 4-3. Thank you, and we'll move on to council meeting dates. Item 9.5, Jennifer, are you speaking to this one? This is the new one that we added in our amendment to the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Administration is recommending to council to adjust to amend their meeting schedule for the remainder of 2020. We're recommending the following dates for council meetings, which would be October 14th, October 21st, November 4th, November 18th, and December 2nd.
Thank you for that, Jennifer. Is someone prepared to put a motion out there to get it on discussion? Councillor Corbeil?
I move the council change their schedule to include October 14th, 21st, November 4th and 18th, December 2nd for council meetings until for the end of this year.
Thank you for that motion. We now have that motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, council. We move on to 9.6, budget meeting dates for the 2021 budget planning sessions. Jennifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration is busy preparing the budget for 2021. We're requesting that council set budget meeting dates for October 28th and 29th at 5 p.m. in council chambers.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Montgomery.
I move we extend them, I'm just joking. I will move that we plan for 2 budget meetings for October 28th and October 29th at 5 p.m.
Thank you for that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councillor Sobel? In council chambers?
In council chambers.
Thank you very much for that friendly amendment, would you call that?
Sure.
Oh, thanks. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to item 10, committee reports. Are there any committee reports from councillors?
Yes,
Councillor Peterson?
Should be good.
second. You can go to somebody. I got to get them up. I am looking for mine. Yeah, that's a good idea. I wanted to just report that the Signage Advisory Committee met, and they had a deep meeting. They are talking about what they are going to bring to council, and they also talked about the kickoff to community engagement for Wheatland Housing, and one of the few considerations that I think they were going to address to Councillor Montgomery in the future and to Mayor Fuel is consideration for a dedicated bike trail along the canal between the county of Rocky View, Strathmore, and Strathmore, that at some future date it could become a joint initiative. And they're also very, very interested in staycations where Strathmore is the focus. So I will send you that report. I'll get Deb to send you the report. The other one is with regards to Wheatland Council, and that is a report from George Berry Architecture. Terry, going to do that?
No, I think she just said Wheatland Housing versus Wheatland
Oh,
Council.
sorry. The report is from Georgeberry Architecture to Wheatland Housing, and it is regarding the Wheatland Lodge invitation from the province of Alberta to submit their intention of a build, and they are doing a huge community consultation. And so the first session is tomorrow night, and Mayor Fuel will be attending a Wheatland Housing meeting in my stead. But I have, when Deb sends you the report, there is a connection there for all community to engage. And they'll be running community engagements every Thursday night, well into November. And already, thanks to our wonderful Jeff Person and Ty and communication staff, they did a Facebook Live on behalf of Wheatland Housing Management Body. And when I looked yesterday, it had over 700 hits. So It's a really good start to a community consultation, thanks to Doug Lagore's intervention and the help of our comms. So if you have any questions, you can send them on the Wheatland Housing, you can send them to Terry or myself. And thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much for your reports. Are there any other reports from councillors? Then we need a motion to accept those reports. Councillor Corbeil.
I move to accept the reports for information.
Thank you for your motion. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. I see you too, Councillor Peterson. As Councillor Bauer said, it's a little like romper room. Item 11, items directly related to council. 11.1, Library Board financials on page 225.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And this is Councillor Montgomery. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So this is just kind of a process formality. The council has to review and then accept for information the library financials to comply with the Libraries Act. And something else that didn't make it in here, but I'll have to make a motion towards, is just accepting. The library has recently hired a new financial reviewer, and so council needs to essentially just approve or accept just basically accepting the new reviewer. So I'll start with that one first. So I will make a motion that council accept the new reviewer, the new financial reviewer, for the library.
Can you name him?
I don't have the name here, actually. Oh, sorry, it's Miranda Burns. So it just has to be like, yeah, we're basically just kind of, similar to how we did, like we approved Ruth McCluskey last week or the week before as a library board member. We kind of oversee that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just had a question regarding that. So just a confirmation on the motion. So actually, I have questions. So there might have been changes to the Public Library Services Act that I'm not aware of. But when I was on the library board, we always had an auditor. We had to always have an external auditor, and had somebody internally that was looking after financials, but the audit always had to be external. And so is this, and I noticed when I was reading Ms. Burns on page, I don't know, can't see it, 128, it is the notes reader, Black Ledger Business Solutions. She said these statements have been prepared for use by management and may not be appropriate for their purpose. But it says it not so I'm just, but only a verification or a verification of the financials. So I was confused about that. I don't understand.
Doug, or maybe, sure, or Councillor Bauer, whoever would, Doug? And then we'll go to you, Councillor Bauer.
Do you want me to?
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the statement there that they have not performed an audit of review of verification information, that's typical of an auditor putting something like that in the financial statement because they have not done a forensic audit. They're just basically auditing the financial records to make sure they're accurate. I do find the last sentence in this, in the letters of notice to reader confusing. But I think what Councillor Montgomery is asking council here is to accept these financial statements as presented as information, and that you appoint or support the appointment of Black Ledger Business Solutions as the auditor for the library board.
Thank you for that clarification, Doug. Comments, Councillor Peterson?
Can I follow up? So Mr. Legore, prior to this, the library board always appointed their own auditor. It was never, and so I don't know, were we doing it wrong? And they've adjusted this and now they're doing it right? Or is this person going to be the overseer of the financial statements and the auditor? So, like, it's just concerning me.
Councillor Bauer might be able to illuminate that.
Thank you. As I've been on the library board for the past 3 years, we have very carefully had to look at every single budget line. And one of the cost-saving measures that the board decided to do, because they were already supported by the Library Act, was that they do not need to do a formal audit, which would be called a forensic audit, every year. And so in order to save money, because they were spending almost $8,000 per year and have that money be used by the library, instead Miranda Burns from Black Ledger Business Solutions was able to perform this look at the general ledger as to be sufficient to meet the requirements of the Library Act. And then a formal audit would be done in a subsequent year. And so that is what I believe to be true. And if council wishes to have more information, Councillor Montgomery and I would be absolutely fine with going back to Jeff, the chair of the library board, and just confirming that.
I know I, for one, would feel a lot better. It would give me time to look at the Public Library Service Board legislation, and because there must have been a change or there's some different interpretation, it could be all right. And I guess I'd like to know the differences of cost between hiring Miranda Burns and the $8,000 savings or $8,200 savings on the past one, and to and what an audit, if they don't be audited every year, I think it's a very good. But
We kind of lost some of that at the end, Denise.
Oh, I just would like clarification. Do they have to do an audit every year? How much, where is the line that shows how much they're paying this new auditing service, and what the savings are between the new service for overseeing the finances versus the old one? I'd just like to look at that.
So, Councillor Montgomery, can this come back at the next council meeting then, just with that? Sorry, Mr. Legore.
To Mr. Mayor, what you could do tonight is receive the financial statements as information and ask the library for clarification on the appointment of auditor. And Jennifer has a comment to add too.
Jennifer?
The act in front of her.
Thank you, Worship. I actually have the Libraries Act in front of me, and under Section 9 of the Libraries Act, under accounts, it says that a municipal board shall keep accounts of its receipts, payments, credits, and liabilities. They also shall have a person who is not a member of the municipal board and whose qualifications are satisfactory to council review the accounts each calendar year and prepare a financial report in a form satisfactory to council, and submit the financial report to council immediately after its completion.
So that's what Councillor Montgomery had brought forward in his motion, was to accept what was presented here by this company that did it. Councillor Sobel?
So my only question was, I think we're all on the same page in regards to what's before us, but it's the approval of the financial, and she's not the financial person who reviewed, the financial reviewer. I think that's where the confusion has come, and is it your understanding that we have to approve that person?
So
Should that not be the board, your board?
The
that would approve her?
the chairperson of, yes, the library board, I believe, has approved this person. The chair of the board has informed me that Municipal Affairs has told them that if or when financial reviewers change, council must pass a motion accepting the new reviewer, which is
Oh, that makes sense.
yes. And so my motion is to pass a motion to accept the new reviewer, which is what my motion was. And I'll deal with the accepting the financial report separately.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to accept this company, this person as the financial.
Correct.
All right. So you've all heard the motion. Do you need to hear it, Jen, or clarification? Okay, we have a motion on the floor and plenty of discussion. All in favor? And that motion is passed unanimously. Councillor Montgomery, do you have a second motion?
Yes, I will move that council accepts the library financials for information.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to notice of motion, public surveys and polls, page 241. Councillor Sobel, are you speaking to this one?
I am not, your worship.
Jennifer is, sorry.
Your worship, I am not speaking to this item.
No.
However, administration forgot to add an item to the agenda when when council adopted the agenda. And that is 11.5 SMB solar panels. That was brought forward by Councillor Sobel and sent out to council after the regular agenda was sent out. So if council would like to deal with that matter, we need a motion to add it to the agenda.
So you're wanting to add it now. Can we legally do that? Okay, so is anyone prepared to make a motion to add 11.5 Strathmore Municipal Building solar panels to our agenda?
I'll make the motion, your worship, that we add 11.5.
Okay, thank you. We have that motion on the floor. Discussion on that motion? Councillor Sobel, may I ask a question of you? Is there a time issue on this being discussed tonight? So we could bring it back at...
This was directed, it was directed to administration some time ago. I think it was just forgotten, that's all.
Okay. So your motion then is to...
To add it today. It was supposed to be on today's agenda, your worship.
Okay. So my question to you is, could it be added to the next meeting's agenda?
It could be added to any agenda at all.
Okay. So your motion stands to add it tonight, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's very short. It's not it's just a request for administration to
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to add this item to the agenda to deal with these solar panels. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is defeated, so it will possibly come to the next meeting's agenda. Okay, thank you. I was a little confused there. I'm okay. Item 12, we have no bylaws to discuss. 13, we have no urgent business. 14, are there questions between councillors and/or council statements?
Sure.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to talk about our meeting last night, correct? Councillor Montgomery, Councillor Bauer, myself, and Your Worship attended a meeting with the Royal Canadian Legion members. We met with the President, Alan Auger, the Vice President, Abby Wilcox, one of the executives, Karen Oliphant, and the chair of the meeting last night was Ken Oliphant. I'm not sure if I said their names correctly. Okay. We did have 4 topics of discussion. Really the most important one that we need to maybe mull over tonight is Remembrance Day. Being COVID-19 and being that this is a very significant event, they are trying to come up with, I guess, a venue. Their suggestion is elderly and any disabled bodies to be inside the Legion up to a maximum of 100, and then have those. Oh, was it 50? I thought it was 100. I wrote down 100. It's for events. It's not a social gathering. Yes, it's an event, so they are allowed 100 inside. And then they were anticipating 200 outside. With the help of the town as to closing the road between the old co-op parking lot and the four-way stop at the corner of the Legion. So they're looking for some help with that.
Mr. Legore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can assist with barricading that road off long enough for the remembrance ceremony.
I think that they actually wanted on the 11th.
Yes.
Okay. I think that we have a policy where we have to inform the businesses so many days in advance. So do we have enough time for that?
Yes.
Okay. So that was one of their concerns, but somebody will reach out and connect with them?
Yes.
Perfect.
Just before you go on, can I ask a question? Are
Yeah.
they going to maintain physical distancing with the people
Yeah,
outside?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's an event, so they want to follow all the rules that they're supposed to follow. They also, were looking for help with that as well. So I was thinking maybe bylaw could help out that day as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know that we will be able to do much to assist with physical distancing because we can't enforce that.
Yeah, okay.
We've got to
So-
rely on the Legion to look
Yeah.
after that. We'll certainly help them with barricades, notifying the businesses of the road closure.
Okay. They were hoping, one of their main asks from us was whether or not we would help them with their video. So what they were planning on doing is having the 100 people inside where the speakers and everybody were, and then having a video outside for the 200 people that could possibly be outside. Don't know if that's,
Sorry, I just want to mention, also, they also want it broadcast on Facebook Live.
oh, there you go.
That could be a challenge for us with our current deficiencies in the IT department. We will take a look at that, but I will not make any commitment on that
Okay.
here tonight.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
you need a contact, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, we'll use Ken Oliphant.
Yeah, it's Alan, actually, or they gave us, I believe it's Alan that was the contact, was it not? He didn't give us a phone number, he just gave us an email address, rcl10@shaw.ca. Auger.
Erica has information on the contacts there too.
Okay. The next, and I totally trust that you're going to connect with them. The next comment or the next discussion topic was their centenary celebration. Didn't say that word right either, which is 2 years from now. But they're reaching out now because they want ideas, support, and so on and so forth, because they're hopefully planning a 1920s theme. So they want to know if we can support them, but they've also reached out to a bunch of historical partners, Heritage Park, Glenbow Museum, Historical Society, Golden Hills, and some local businesses. Third topic was that, did I say that? Yeah, third topic was grants and renovations. And we actually kind of giggled, or I giggled today when I got Denise's email, because we had mentioned the New Horizons grant to them, and actually told them that we would touch base with Denise. So thank you very much, Denise, for that. The next topic was they were looking to make a relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. We did give them Haley Portier's information, but if you would mind bringing it up at your next meeting, that would be great. And the last thing they wanted to talk about was their Veterans Walk, which is, it just took place in September, and they had a very disappointing turnout, and they were hoping for 2021 to maybe get some help from the town as far as guiding and helping them advertise and planning and the whole kit and caboodle. Did I miss anything? It was lovely to meet with them. They were all fabulous people. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bauer?
The only thing I'd like to just add to that is that the Legion was really specific in their request for being able to broadcast that live stream in order to be able to meet the COVID targets for the number of people allowed inside, outside, and then more people would be allowed to stay at home and watch the broadcast. So if the town's not able to support them in that request, would I be able to ask if you'd be able to point us in a direction where we would be able to help them access that same level of service through someone else?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly provide a list of people that provide this service in the area.
Thank you.
It would be a commercial venture that they would go to,
Yeah.
which would have a cost to it, but we'll see what we can do. Jennifer, do you want to add anything?
Maybe just give us an opportunity, give administration an opportunity to have a look and see what we could do for them, and then we can let council know what we can do. Yeah.
Councillor Peterson, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to say, I know in years past, the high school has provided support.
IT support?
Yes.
Okay, so that's another option we could have to reach out to their department, for lack of a better word. I can't remember if Brandy Roberts is involved in that, or if it's a different teacher. Anyway, that's something we can look into as well.
It wouldn't be Ed?
He's more computers, animation,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
robotics.
Yeah, you're right.
Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the other things that got brought up last night actually was to do with like snow removal around the Legion. And I understand we're going to be talking about the snow policy soon. So I was wondering if we could get some idea brought back to council what it would involve to clear the snow around that building on the sidewalks as part of our snow clearing, just for us to consider anyways.
Mr. Legore?
Mr. Mayor, we'll take a look at that and advise council.
Thank you very much.
So that would be like an in-kind service to offer to them to help with their
Yeah, they said
viability?
They said it's quite a substantial cost for them. So and we run something by on the sidewalk near there. So
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Cox?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry. I also just wanted to point out something, and hopefully to all the public listening as well. Something I learned last night. Used to be that in order to be a member of the Legion, you had to be a veteran. And they've changed that. Absolutely anyone can be a part of the Legion. Their memberships are $55. But I also wanted to mention that only $17 of that goes to our local Legion. The rest goes to their command. So if you're thinking about or want to partake in it, what a great cause. $55 a year to be a member. The other thing that I forgot to mention was that their kitchen is now being managed, run by PJ's. So PJ's Diner, is that what it's called? Has two locations. One down by the lake and the other in the Legion. So Please feel free, stop in there anytime. Kids are also welcome. So we were told last night. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Peterson, you had a comment?
Oh, thank you. We're going to say that on Saturday, I attended on your behalf a joint project presentation between Aspen, Siksika, Strathmore, and the County of Wheatland to introduce trellis services under Aspen. And they had a wonderful turnout, and it was a really great day. And I think everyone was encouraged by the presence of the partnership group. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that brings to conclusion the councillor reports, committee reports?
No, statements between.
Statement, oh, sorry. Thank you, I got confused there. So we move on to administrative inquiries, and I know Councillor Montgomery is thinking about it, but we might be able to fly through it without your motion. Okay, 15.1, administrative inquiry response for community signs, page 248.
Your Worship, there are 3 administrative inquiry responses included in the agenda this evening. They're there for council's information. If there's any questions arising, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions from councillors on those administrative responses? Seeing none? Then all we're needing now is a motion to adjourn. Councillor Corbeil.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn, very forcefully too, at 9:25 PM. All in favor? And the motion is carried.
Mr. Mayor, can I have 2 minutes of council's time, please?
No, but you can have as much time as
It's not going to take very long. It's going to be